Yo, what's good, YouTube? My name's Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. If you're watching this, then that means that I'm chilling with some homies in Colorado and doing flips and making tunes. Today, I'm actually going to show you how to make a clap similar to this one that I made yesterday, which kind of sounds like this. Now, this might be a surprise to you or not, but there is zero synthesis involved other than effect processing. I actually used this mic to record that. I really want to make this a point, though, that you don't need a super high quality mic. Effect processing will save your life, but what I would try to do is, no matter what kind of microphone you have, try to get into a room that's as quiet as possible. Even still, there is ambience that's happening over in the background. We're going to be able to work with that, but I'm going to show you my process, probably in a bridge version. I'm not going to talk about the ins and outs, but we're going to be making some sick claps. So to get started, what we need is a microphone, and this is the hardest part of this entire process. All we're going to do is make a new audio track. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to do a couple of different things. Using the proximity of the mic, I'm going to do some claps that are up front. I'm going to do a couple of claps that are in the back. And then I'm also going to try to change some of the inflections about how I use my hands as an instrument. So to get started, let's go ahead and turn the monitoring off. We're just going to record, and I am going to record some claps in. That's more than enough. So behind this, really what the name of the game is to take these different recordings. We are not going to use all of them. We don't need to. You can, if you want to, you can, apply some other Foley or whatever, but this is just to give you an idea about how to layer in the first place, and also hopefully take away the fear of layering. Like, whenever somebody told me back in the day about layering drums, I was like, oh man, that's so much work. And I was like, no, it doesn't have to be. Just chill. So what we're going to do is we're just going to find a bass, a fundamental. I don't even know if that would be. We're going to find like an anchor sample. So I'm just going to listen to these and see if I can find one that is like a good starting point. So I think this one jumps out to me the most. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this out, and we're just going to place this right here, and we're going to move this clap just to the center right here. So now this is our starting point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some of these other layers, say maybe like this one, and I'm going to start to place this under here to create kind of like an offset. Now you can do this with as many samples as you want to, but one thing that I'm going to try to do is make this not overlap too much. It doesn't need to be perfect, but what you'll hear now is a little bit of kind of like a flam. That's a little bit too far away, so let's get it a little bit closer. And now what we can do is we can continue to layer this. And we can kind of keep stacking this, kind of like so, and remove this. Or we can even offset this a little bit further. We can even pitch this if we want to. And we might want to actually just turn this down just a little bit. Now that we have that, something that I think is really useful quite a bit is to actually use a snap. So that one's okay. Let me see these other ones. That one's not too bad. There we go. And what we can do is we can actually use this at the very beginning, say like just a little bit before here. And what this is going to do is create a really nice smear. So because this is transient heavy, what I want to do first before anything else is I'm actually going to EQ the bottom end of this out. And there are a lot of transient kind of like merging between this, but that's kind of what you want. Is it doesn't need to be like a, super pop. It needs to be like a bunch of hands or a bunch of stuff kind of clapping over themselves, depending on what you're going for. So let's go ahead and just kind of great. So this is more than really what you need. I guess if you want it to be really cool, then you can add some Foley. So we can just kind of use this as the tail. And what I'm going to do is move this over to the side, and you see that this has a transient on it. So I'm actually just going to remove the transient. And then maybe what I can do on this is fade this out so it's a little bit more natural. Maybe we can pitch this up. Let's stretch it out. And then we can set this to Elastic Pro. And really, you know, we don't even need that layer per se, but once we have something like that, we can merge all of these together, and now we can start talking about how to make all this work. So claps typically do not have a lot of low end in them whenever they are processed. So you'll see that for the most part, there's just a bunch of stuff down here that we don't really need.
Recording to logbook.
Somebody followed, thank you. And to me, this is already a really good starting point. I think one thing that I am going to do though is I'm going to go back to here and just pull this back in. And maybe even just get rid of it. We can always add some space later, but just know that's how you can layer fully into that, because I know that a lot of people might ask that question. But now that we have that, we've got some EQ. The next thing that we're going to look for is some saturation. So I am actually going to use this preset here that I use all the time, which is a snare maker. Go watch my Saturn II video if you want to figure out how to do this. But boom, look at that. Next piece is we're going to add some compression. And this is just my chain. This is just what I've found to be working quite a bit. This is going to be some parallel compression, so we're going to add quite a bit of attack. And we're going to move this down until this sits around -8 to 12. Again, that's just my own preference. That's already really big. It's going to get bigger though. Now that we have a little bit of that, we're going to reach into our next thing, which is this tube. If you all didn't know, I've actually got a giveaway whenever we hit 20K. So if you want a free copy of this, or a chance to get a free copy of this anyways, help me get to 20K. So now we just need to listen to this and get some more crunch to it. That actually sounds pretty nice to me. So let's go ahead and back off of this now. Very snappy. Two more things. Let's go ahead and add a fuse compressor to this. I will be covering this later at some point in time, but with this, we're going to make this just blow up. Now, what I like about this so much is that it really helps balance the sound out, and it's also really good that we can pull up the high end without the harshness coming up, which is usually around here. So maybe even moving this up to 11K or so and kind of reducing this region. Maybe even that's a bit much. We can pull the threshold up, turn the ratio up on both of these. And then we can kind of finagle with this to figure out where we want this to be. So now we can kind of back off of this just a bit, clip it. And then as you can hear, there's quite a bit of a tail on this, and that's from that noise that I was talking about with this recording. So if you're getting something like that, just fade it out. See, no big deal. Now from there, we've got a couple more things that we're going to do to this. We're going to add in our newfangled saturate, which I just like this being on the end of everything. And that just makes it really pop. And then I'm going to pull off the mix on this just a little bit. Now, the final thing that we want to do is use some kind of reverb or some kind of spatial to do this. And one thing that you can do while you're doing this is to actually pan these out. I don't think that you should do this every single time, but it definitely is viable if you kind of want to spread the room out a bit. So just random panning by like very minimal. Sometimes that can make everything sound a little bit disjointed though, so that's not always the best idea. Just you're gonna have to try it out depending on how many layers you have. But what you can do is we can add in just a layer of reverb. So I'm gonna use crystalline, which I think is really good for drums. We can kind of just go to this where is it? It's drums and then like a clap preset or something, like claps mix, and then we can kind of adjust this to like kind of a nice middle ground. Obviously that's a bit much, so we're going to back off of that just a bit. Now one thing that's cool is that this has damping, so we can actually make this a little bit darker. And then we can also turn on a threshold here on the gate to make it stop. So just a little bit of space and then it will cut out. Maybe a little bit less. Now one thing that you might want to consider is, and you don't have to do this every time, but you don't even have to do this at all, is that sometimes it makes more sense to layer this like this. So you can set the dry wet to 100%, and that way you can actually dial in the level of reverb. So now within this, we can adjust this here. Or we can, you know, adjust the kind of reverb as well. Maybe we don't want it to sparkle a lot, but we want a bigger size, maybe a little bit less of a shimmer. We can adjust the tone, pull up the sides. And now behind that, we went from something like this to something like this. And if we were to look at that on an EQ, this is going to make it louder, I believe, but that's okay. We've got a really nice shape. So I'll leave you with this. One final thing that you can do in order to change the tone of this is go back to your EQ here and start to manipulate how this works here. And you can also do this on your compressor or a multiband or OTT or whatever. I think it's a little bit easier to do if you have fuse or if you have an EQ. But based off of the shape around the mids to mid highs over here is what is going to dictate kind of like the feel of the clap. So if I were to adjust this, to me that actually sounds a little bit more evened out. But if I were to push this up, you see how that's kind of creating a little bit more of a smack now? So I think that's the one for me. That's the one that I like. And then of course, once you have something that you're happy with, which I actually got a few different ones, now we can just pull them all out. And actually, I don't want to do it like that. Hold on one sec. I'm going to go like this and then grab some of these guys. That's fine. And just grab them like this. And now I've got several different versions of this that I can pull out. So let's say I do this. Oops, let's pull this out of the thing. So all of these are kind of similar, but they all have a little bit different flavor to them just because of that EQ. And snares work in the same way, especially if you're making 808 snares. But if you take a look, all right, that one's similar. So yeah, we've got several different versions that have just a slightly different timbre between all of these. So if this is interesting to you, then be sure to consider either becoming a member or checking out my Faceplant Drum Masterclass. Today we did this obviously from scratch, but we did it with recording. You can also do this with kicks and snares via recording. There's a bunch of different little tricks and whatnot that you can add to it. There's also some things that I cover only in the masterclass just as a means of getting extra depth. But this is a methodology that I've figured out that sounds pretty nice, especially when you're trying to, you know, come up with beats. If you need an example about something, one beat that I was actually writing yesterday without any other context, it's just drums, kind of sounds like this. And that was the exact same way that I showed you in this process that I did today. So thank you all so much. Consider becoming a member. Support me on alckemy.com if you're interested in presets and stuff. I don't currently have any sample packs available that are up to par, but if you would like a drum sample pack, then I might consider making another one. Otherwise, thanks guys. I hope that you all enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one. Probably sometime next week because I'm still in Colorado. Bye.